Listeners in the chat, can you hear me? Let me know in the chat. I'm hoping I can. Get through to you. Let me know. This will be a test. You heard an all right. That's exciting. Oh my god, I'm so excited. Streaming very soon. I love you all. 1 second. Hello, hello, hello! Welcome everyone to the Deep Dive channel. I'm Erik Voss. I appreciate all of you for bearing with me this morning as we had some technical difficulties, but this is going to be a live breakdown of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I'm so excited to be here this morning talking about this movie with you because this movie absolutely floored me. I've seen it now 3 times in the theater. I saw it at a press screening, and I've seen it twice in the past 48 hours. And every time I see it, I love it more and more. For everyone joining us this morning, this will be a spoiler conversation about Guardians Volume 3. If you haven't seen the movie yet, please, 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 you can pause this live stream. It'll be up as a video later. You can watch it later, and then you won't be able to join the live conversation. But why am I doing this so early? Yeah, I know it's early, but like there is a certain first wave of nerd who goes to see movies on opening night, and I cannot wait to just have this initial raw, unfiltered conversation about it with you. This is not going to be as polished of a breakdown as, say, the one coming out on the main new Rockstars channel later today. But we're going to go through this movie scene by scene and talk about everything that James Gunn did really well in this movie. We're gonna talk through some things that we wish might have been more clear or better or more refined. But ultimately, I think this was a really, really successful conclusion to the Guardians saga. And I'm really gonna miss hanging out with all these characters. I'm kind of bummed to lose them. Sorry, I'm just making sure everything's looking right. Okay, yeah, it all looks good on my end. But yeah, this is a way to go. If you're new to this channel, this is the Deep Dive channel. It's part of the new Rockstars Digital Network, an ever-growing network, as you'll find out later today. And it's something that we launched in February. It's just a corner of the internet where I can really, maybe once or twice a week, dive deep on a subject. And that includes live streams like this, where you're just going to get me for like, I think I'm going to be able to go for 90 minutes here just talking about this movie. The best way to support what I'm doing here is by going over to nerdriot.shop, going to the Deep Dive collection, and grabbing one of the items. This is a very, turns out, appropriate thematically shirt, Rocket Science 89P13 shirt, where it's filled with like little Easter eggs. It's a design that I worked with our designers myself on, so I snuck in some things in there for you guys. You'll also see me sipping out of this Deep Dive mug throughout the broadcast. Yeah, I'm shilling. I apologize for that, but it's really the best way to kind of keep the lights on here, because even though it's part of the new Rockstars channel, we're kind of in our own little budget, and we have to like make ends meet in our own way. And since we're a new channel, it's really hard to do that. But I've been amazed with the support that you've all shown me so far, and thank you again for joining the live stream. Okay, let's jump into this movie. I'm going to be taking some super chats as I go. Caleb Jacobs, Showtime A-Holes, thanks, man. Actually, Showtime A-Holes was one of the many quotes that was in, it's not going to be here visually on screen, but the opening Marvel Studios title card. They Guardiansified it, and every image and quote that you see on screen was a Guardians of the Galaxy callback. And what's so great about that is I think we forget the Guardians of the Galaxy is like, I think the longest amount of time that we've lived within a trilogy. The first one coming in 2014, this next one coming 9 years later. And in between that, this will be the 8th title that the Guardians of the Galaxy appear in. So we had Guardians Volume 1, Volume 2 in 2017, then we had Infinity War, Endgame, then we had Thor Love and Thunder, we had I Am Groot, we had the Guardians Holiday Special, and now we have this. I might have skipped one in there. I apologize for that. But yeah, that's a long time to live with characters. So we've had a lot of history with them. We've gone on journeys with each of them. And what this movie did so well, one of many things, is that it gave each of the characters complete arcs. I mean, they even snuck in an arc for like Kraglin and Cosmo in here. I don't even know if I needed an arc for them, but I appreciated that I got it. So that's, you'll see that more in the breakdown, but like they snuck in specifically Drax's dancer and non-dancer quote from Volume 2. And you know from other videos I've done on this Deep Dive channel how obsessed I am with that quote, because it gave me like 2 categories to group all MCU characters into, ones who are able to dance instinctively and ones that just need a bit of coaxing. And Drax starts in Volume 2 admitting that he is not a dancer. His wife Ovette, he said he knew that he loved her because she was not a dancer, and neither is he. But now in this movie, he's finally moved on from Ovette, and he's found a new reason to join the dance circle. And I thought that was just so beautiful. Again, if you're just joining us, this is a spoiler conversation of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. If you haven't seen the movie yet, please don't spoil yourself with this. Sage Martinez says, "You're the reason why I've gotten into filmmaking. Thank you so much for everything you've done for me and the rest of the community. Love you, Voss." Oh, thanks, Sage. And I called you Martinez just a second ago because I have the Ravager in my head. Okay, so this movie, after we get through the Marvel Studios opening title card, we start right here in the Counter-Earth cage with a young raccoon that we later find out to be Rocket. And this, already my heart is kind of breaking because we see a whole bunch of them. It's not Rocket by himself. We just see that he was literally the pick of the litter. And there's something fascinating that happens in this opening image that I think a lot of people might overlook. All the other, they're called kits or cubs, but I'm going to call them kits, baby raccoons. They all scurry back to the back of the cage. Rocket almost you could say paralyzed in fear, or is it bravery, or is it a bit of both, does not back up. He almost leans in and leans forward into the High Evolutionary, reaching out to grab him. Sorry, we see that right here. And what's so important about this is pet owners may know this. This is something I learned in dog obedience classes. But everyone should know this in case you ever reach out to pet a friend's dog and not really sure what they're dealing with. Never reach out like this with your palm down, because animals often see that as like an aggression. That's especially, oh God, these poor animals that have been abused or come from like just abusive homes. That's how the hit would come in. So you always want to reach in palm up, because that, you know, you might have food in your hand. It's less of a threatening gesture. And I mean, James Gunn is obviously a dog lover. He puts his dogs in these movies. You know this was like an intentional thing in this moment. And now we get to see it from the perspective of this animal and how scary this is. But I think there's something unique about Rocket's brain chemistry that caused this decision in this moment to step forward. Because as we find out, a big important theme in this movie is it's not the hands that make us, it's the hands that guide the hands. A quote that Lila says later in the movie that confused me the first time I saw it, and it really took a third viewing to fully understand what she means by that. But it's the implication of intelligent design, and the intelligent designer in this movie is not Herbert Wyndham. This is a guy who is basically plagiarizing the work of the real higher powers of this universe and claiming it as his own. And I think that's his inner anxiety that he cannot reconcile. He feels like guilty for passing off someone else's work as his own, and he can't figure it out. He can't replicate it on his own. There's something unique about Rocket's brain that he was conceived with, that was there from conception, from an embryonic stage. It was not there done to him in these operations that we're going to see. Okay, another super chat. Ben H says, I bet Quill still knows Peter Parker is Spider-Man since he wasn't on Earth for Strange's spell. Now he's back on Earth. Interesting theory, Ben. I think Doctor Strange's spell encompass the entire known universe, potentially even the multiverse, but at least this known universe. It's kind of like legal contracts now. When you sign like IP contracts, they say in the known universe, just anticipating some future, like the IP will still be owned if we ever expand to Mars. So yeah, I think that was the same thing for Quill. All right, so what we're looking at right now, I'm sorry, I didn't explain this before. Visually, I'm showing you a string out. What is a string out? So whenever I'm breaking down these movies, part of the difficulty of our task is I literally go through every trailer, promo, 15-second TV spot, and I compile them all chronologically into this MP4 file so that we have a chronological string out of the movie visuals-wise to go through as reference points. That's how like we have like much of the footage that you see in all of our content on New Rockstars is this. So this is so hard to do. This takes like weeks to put together because I have to keep track of everything. I catalog it, I time code it, I have to communicate updates to all of our post-production team to put it all together. But it makes a big difference on how we're able to get these videos out to you and they're able to look so polished as opposed to just someone talking into a microphone and then just putting in random assets over it. We're actually able to kind of recreate the movie this way. Okay. So from here, it's not shown in the string out, but there's this really cool effect where the camera pushes in on this young Rocket's face and does like this kind of, it's not just a cross dissolve, it's like a morphing of his fur. You literally see time pass as his skull changes shape. And it's, if it were just a cross dissolve, like in the trailer version of this, it's a cross dissolve. But the fact that you see the fur move around on his face is just really creepy because like, it just kind of shows, it feels painful. Like it looks like a painful process. Y'all know that I'm obsessed with Animorphs, the K. Applegate series. And one thing that's, you know, they talk about the morphing and how it's not pretty. It's not supposed to be pretty. When you watch someone shapeshift from a human to an animal, from an animal to another animal, it looks like you kind of hear the sounds of bones crunching. It's disgusting. And only Cassie was able to make it look beautiful. But all the others, it's gross. It's like vomit inducing. So yeah, the problem with the Nickelodeon show, of course, is that they made everything look beautiful because it takes a lot of effort and VFX budget to make something look ugly. To make something look clean and beautiful and seamless, that's, you know, arguably easier. But yeah, we cross dissolve into Rocket's face in the present day on Nowhere. And that's where the movie begins. So we're beginning with like James Gunn sampling of an acoustic version of Radiohead's Creep. And this is Tom York. And I think Creep is one of the most misunderstood and arguably overrated karaoke songs or any kind of songs. And I'm not dissing Tom York because Tom York totally agrees with this. Tom York is like, yeah, like I thought I was making like a game-changing song, but I just made this like mopey piece of crap, and now everyone just like sings it all the time, and it sounds like it's become this anthem for like losers. But like I think it's really ultimately his criticism on someone who hates himself so much. It's hating yourself for hating yourself, which is the epitome of depression and anxiety. It's not like you feel anxious about something. You feel anxious about the fact that you feel anxious about something, and then it becomes this like inception of anxiety, and that's what anxiety is. So that's, I think Creep does embody that in that fun way, but it's on everyone's collective mind because of that Social Network trailer where they used a Swedish girls choir and it sounded beautiful, but I think on there it was more of a surface level. The fact that they used young girls to sing it over this images of the Facebook interface, I think was really the commentary there, because it just showed like, oh, the people using these social media apps are children, and they're looking at pictures of each other and judging themselves. So I thought that was really well done. Anyway, but yeah, so as always, the music in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies is diegetic. Rocket is listening to it on the Zune that we see in his hand right there. That's Peter's Zune that was given to him by Kraglin. Yondu got it for him. And it replaced the Walkman that Ego broke that contained Meredith's mixtape, which to me was like even more upsetting than Yondu dying in Volume 2. But yeah, Peter's not in a good state. He still misses Gamora. We got a hint of this in the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special. They cheered him up by kidnapping his hero, Kevin Bacon, as a Christmas present. But clearly that's not enough. And so Peter's in a rough state, but like Rocket's in an even darker state in some ways. He still doesn't fully know what he is, and he's listening to the song about alienation, but really like feeling alienated because you feel alienated, if that makes sense. I know it sounds like we could just smush all that alienation to one alienation pile, but no, that's not how people with anxiety feel. They feel every distinct layer with increasing levels of precision and vivid texture. So yeah, it's a dangerous cycle. I know I missed some super chats, so I'm just gonna try to keep up with them as I go. Melissa asked, do you think any of the G3 characters will stay in the MCU? Yeah, I think a lot of them will come back for Secret Wars. I think the legendary Star-Lord will return promise was that. I think Rocket's going to come back, and I'll talk about why the Rocket might have been like selected by the Divine, and that's why he was given that brain chemistry. Frey Girl, Voss, I love the live streams. I had a question. Do you think Rocket built the Bowie? We saw him rebuild the Milano, so I love the movie so much. Yeah, I think that's an interesting theory. I think the Bowie is built off of technology from the Ravagers as well. The way it has detachable parts. I think Kraglin had a lot to say in how that was designed. I think Nebula had a lot to say with how that was designed, just because she seems to be in charge of nowhere. But yeah, I think it was like a co-collaboration between Rocket and Nebula would be my theory. Super Bass AB says, with the team lineup introducing so many new members, is there anyone you would think would make a good addition? I want to see Kitty Pryde Star-Lord. Yeah. The legendary Star-Lord will return thing made me think like, oh, are we going to see a connection between Kitty Pryde and Star-Lord? My issue with that is that, like, you know, Chris Pratt's just getting old. Kitty Pryde, I kind of want her to be introduced as a younger character in whatever the mutant saga is in the MCU. So we'll see, but who knows? With like a multiverse crossover, if that's how they bring in like the X-Men and bring in some of them from like the Fox franchise, I don't think Elliot Page is going to come back as Kitty Pryde would be my guess. But yeah. I think that would be a fun arc to explore in the future. Lewis Legg says, yo bro, cheers for all these breakdowns and analysis over the years. I hope you and your family are happy and healthy. Guardians 3 was dope. Yeah, thanks Lewis. I appreciate that. I appreciate your support. Okay, we're gonna keep going through the movie. So yeah. We get to see Nowhere, and I think it's interesting that the Guardians were resettled on this celestial skull. That's kind of where a lot of this started in Volume 1. The fact that the Bowie Moon Age Daydream music was playing as the Bowie soared into the Nowhere skull before is the origin of the Bowie name now. So I think it's come full circle in that way, and I love that they made the Skull of Nowhere a battleship now. It's not just a home, it's mobile. And there's an interesting detail that they did to set that up. So Rocket's coming through here. Star-Lord is pissed that he's using his Zune, but it's not like Star-Lord needs it right now. But it's just interesting that the music is always so diegetic. James Gunn makes a big point of playing the music on set to inspire all the characters. So there's like little moments when Rocket in this movie, like, in Volume 2, he hummed along to Glenn Campbell's Southern Nights. In this movie, he hums along to, I think it's that Alice Cooper song, or maybe one of the other songs later in the movie. But like, you have to wonder, was it Sean Gunn who was humming it? Was it Bradley Cooper? I imagine it was Sean Gunn because he was the one there on set. Bradley Cooper would have been in an ADR booth. But I just love how like later James Gunn would have had to coach Bradley Cooper to be like, hey, so my brother was singing along to this in the take. Can you do it too? And Bradley Cooper's like, yeah, okay, yeah, sure. Beware the Dread says, super chat, one thing I was wondering is where Peter's helmet was. I was expecting him to use it in the end, but he didn't. He almost died. Yeah, I agree. That's a question I had too. Where was Peter's helmet? He could have used it. I don't know. Maybe it's a contractual thing with Chris Pratt. He's like, you're not going to do to me what they're doing to Pedro Pascal. I want to show my face. I'm not covering this baby up. I don't know. That's probably not the case. It's just interesting that he didn't use it. I agree with you. Maybe a plot hole. Rocket, I really tried hard to translate all this stuff for you guys. I believe this is Cree lettering that translates to milky. It's some kind of like milky substance that he's drinking. It doesn't seem to be that consequential to the plot. So we get to see the full new Guardians lineup. Cosmo, the space dog, is back from Volume 1. Remember, Cosmo was one of the collector's collections based on Laika, the poor space dog that the Russians sent into space in the 60s. Didn't make it back. And I think that is the theme of this movie, right? Poor mistreatment of what we consider to be lower life forms. But what constitutes a lower life form? What constitutes a soul? I think the deeper message of this movie is that Rocket was born with a soul, was born with some kind of potential to reach divine intelligence. And in a universe where we're capable of enhancing creatures, or if we're gonna make that choice to do that, we better start treating them right. Right? Like, you can't mistreat them or you can't deny them their rights. And that's what Rocket has been fighting his entire life. And that's, a fight that Cosmo has been fighting too. So it's not like, by calling her a bad dog, yeah, it seems like a one-note joke and then it gets paid off by calling her a good dog. I think that just like, for what she has sacrificed in her life, what she's given up, at the very least, just call her a good dog and give her a good dog pet. That's it. An underhanded pet. Scratch that chin. Don't do that. Okay. So yeah, Peter's in a rough state. Okay, so interesting thing happens, right? Adam Warlock shows up. Crazy for You is playing through space, but it's actually being listened on the Zune by Rocket, and he gets tackled. Now he's getting this like key swipe card, and we don't know what it is, but we find out later that's what opens the gate in the cage. Now, one thing I forgot to mention. The coordinates, the location coordinates. James Gunn's long lost hidden Easter egg is encoded into these location coordinates that we've seen in Volume 1 and Volume 2. Captain Marvel's had some coordinates, including the Marvel's trailer, but really James Gunn is only responsible for stuff he did. We do not know what the Easter egg is yet, but we have identified what the coordinates of this movie are, and there's 3 new ones. And I'm still in the process of like decoding what they are, but to me, the most fascinating thing that I've been able to determine right now is the fact that Nowhere's coordinates have changed. In this movie, it's M211, R516, XS16C plus 16151MW. In Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, those weren't the coordinates. The coordinates were M3RD17H17211. So it's just changed a little bit. But some of the numbers have been moved around. And we find out why. It's because Nowhere is now mobile. They have moved its location. And just by giving us the coordinates in these opening minutes, it foreshadows this reveal that they can now move it from location to location. Now, how is Adam Warlock able to find it? One must imagine he's been flying around space for a while, or there's some other kind of like, way to track things based off of signals it emits. Like, it's not exactly hiding, but it is movable. I just thought that was really cool. There's only 2 other new coordinates that get revealed. One is counter Earth, that's K20H MW1748 P2S plus 5M5 P0Z4, and then OrgoCorp HQ is A41P P2126 Y430 plus 174144V. Okay, so we're going to spend some time over the next few days and several weeks trying to decode exactly what this means and how they connect to the coordinates, but it seems like based off of what we know from Volume 1 and Volume 2 is that each movie kind of foreshadows something that's going to come up in the next one. So the big twist of Volume 2 is that Meredith Quill's cancer came from Ego, the living planet, and that it seemed like the nowhere coordinates were Meredith Quill's X or something like that. This isn't real. This is part of a decoding campaign led by our friend Mastertainment MT, and that's how I actually came to know who he is. And he did such great work with that. And then there's like a whole community of decipherers who year after year have been trying to decode it. But the reason why it's still hard to decode is that James Gunn did not use a consistent substitution method. In some cases, numbers equal letters, but in other times he's using leet speak, and it's just not consistent. So that's why, however many years later, 9 years later, people are still trying to figure it out. I think James Gunn is just going to have to tell us exactly what the translation is because he wasn't consistent in the way he did it. It's still cool that he did that. It's just like, yeah. Glenn asking, did Gunn ever tell us what the Easter egg was? Yeah, I answered your question there, buddy. And sorry if I'm missing super chats. Oh, Mac, Beware the Dreads. Oh, yeah, you already asked that. Just saw another one come through here. Andrew McKee says, saw this in Edinburgh on Wednesday and was blown away. The perfect ending to the saga and left us with joy and hope rather than despair, which is the lesser director may have done just by killing everyone. I agree. I don't think you need characters to die in order to have closure. I think there are other ways, and it's more of a challenge to give a character closure without killing them off, and I think James Gunn did that in this movie. Okay, so Adam Warlock, I want to hear your thoughts on Adam Warlock in this movie. Personally, this was one of the issues in this movie that I think could have been done better. I think Adam Warlock it seemed honestly that he was edited down. Like, if you're going to cast Will Poulter, and you're going to deliver on this promise from the end of Volume 2, it seemed like there was a lot of takes where he had more of an arc, and they just kind of trimmed it down in the movie. That's just my take. I still think he had some great moments in the movie. I just could have used some more of him. And by more, I don't mean more screen time. I just mean more depth from him. Because I just know who Adam Warlock is in the comics. And he's such a fascinating character. He's kind of like Space Jesus. He's a very wise character. And I think you can make someone still a villain just by being, and still maybe a little soulless. But he just seemed like a big baby in the movie. So that was my issue with him. So we're already very worried about Rocket in this movie. Again, we're looking at a string out. So this clip was released by Marvel Studios. It's out there on the internet, and that's how we got it into our string out here. So little detail, I like how Rocket already uses his gravity boots. Like, we see him using his gravity boots in the opening minutes here. There's, like, a lot of fun little details on Nowhere. Like, they eat roasted orlonis on a stick, like kebabs. Orlonis are the little rat creatures that we've seen throughout these movies. But, yeah, Rocket uses his gravity boots to set up them using the gravity boots on the OrgoCorp OrgoScope or whatever, that big fleshy facility that they walk around on. So, so we just kind of get these first act setups here. Spidey Dill says the Guardians 1 Marvel Studios tag had the metallic whine when the Marvel Studios pops up. Could that be the noise Layla's arms make? Oh, you're talking about the deep dive analysis that I did for Volume 1. Yeah, it sounded like a camera shutter or like a tape rewind. I don't know if James Gunn had the exact plan. He definitely planned to bring in Lila at some point, but like the sound of her arms, I think might have been him planning too far ahead. If that was it, that'd be pretty impressive. Part of the issue with Kraglin is he can't command the Yaka arrow because he didn't hear specifically what Yondu used to command that, and it wasn't his whistle, it wasn't his brain, it's not a concentration thing, it's using your heart. And there is something about the power of love in these movies, and love can be like a cosmic force, something that has a physical, measurable effect on the world around us, and I think that's something that James Gunn put in with all these characters' arcs. As this fight happens, Nebula's great to see here, and I don't know about you guys, but to me, Nebula was very like Iron Man in this moment, right? Like the way she holds out her arm, even the pose with one knee up, I don't know if you heard this, she amplifies her voice. That's something that Tony Stark is able to do through his Mark 6 armor at the beginning of Avengers when he's trying to arrest Loki in Berlin. He's like, stand down or whatever. Like, that's something that she has worked into her own cybernetic implants. It's like, she's got a little microphone, which is fun. And yeah, she has this new arm that is a nanotech weave that was designed for her by Rocket, according to James Gunn. And it was to return the favor for her giving Rocket Bucky's arm at the end of the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special. We still do not know how she got Bucky's arm. At some point she traveled to Earth, maybe while Bucky was in the shower, but I feel like our man showers with that thing on. He wouldn't just leave that lying around. I don't know. But yeah, so she's pretty fun to watch in this movie, and she's able to fire these energy blasts. And I like to see her in this new role as kind of the sheriff of Nowhere. Sorry, I don't want the sound to come through. So as this is going on, Adam Warlock gives her the Ralphie treatment and punches her jaw and dislocates it. And I believe you see the shot where like her mouth gets I don't know. Yeah, and I just love that they like dislocate her jaw in a specific way because that is how we saw it um when she like had her jaw dislocated on the Dark Aster in the 2014 film. I just thought it was really fun. Like both her and Mantis in this movie are like finding ways to like get their bodies broken, but then they quickly repair it. Let's see. Glenn says, please help decide this, Eric. Who wins between Eros and Adam Warlock? I think Eros seems more in control of his powers. We just haven't seen him in a combat scenario. Also, Eros's tactics are like kind of creepy, so I don't know if that's what he would use on Adam Warlock. But Eros is technically an Eternal, so it's just Eternals seem to be like of weirdly defined powers, right? So Eternals are like he's Thanos' brother, and Thanos was really powerful, but I don't know if Thanos was powerful because he was Eternal. So I would give Adam Warlock the edge in that fight. Kenny C says, is it possible that Nebula is using Stark tech via Rocket? Yeah. I think like Rocket learned from watching Tony Stark use his nanotech during the events of Avengers Endgame when Rocket was on Earth for 5 years. I think he picked up a lot of technological insights from what the Terrans were doing. And the smartest Terrans are like Bruce Banner, Tony Stark, and Shuri, and they all like know how nanotech works and that kind of thing. So I think Rocket picked up some tricks. Andrew McKee says, also thanks for giving us a peek behind the curtain. Fascinating to hear about the hard work put into these videos we love. Greetings from Scotland. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you everyone for sending super chats. Okay, so I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit here. Yeah, that's the Orloni stand that we saw earlier, and I think you see some Orlonis that are hanging here. Yeah, right here. Yeah, definitely some Orlonis. So even their favorite like fast food place is getting wrecked here. Yeah, so yeah, that's when her jaw gets broken. So yeah, Rocket gets hit with some kind of ugly blast, and we don't really see it here, but it's kind of a scary moment because Rocket, we find out, has a kill switch, and that's horrifying. That among his cybernetic implants, it's kind of like, you know, Steve Jobs or Tim Cook being like, no one can crack open our hardware. It belongs to us. If it does, it's going to explode because we don't want anyone to look at the secrets. But it's also probably to cover up the horrible things he did. He's going to like destroy the evidence if you ever try to open him up. It's just so sad. So they have to basically go back to the manufacturer in a way, which is just kind of a bummer because there was that line from Avengers Endgame where Tony Stark thought Rocket was a Build-A-Bear, and Rocket's like, well, maybe I am. Like, he doesn't even know what he is, and it's just so depressing that like they have to go back to the Build-A-Bear manufacturer and be like, hey, so do all these things come with kill switches? And it's just like a recurring thing in these movies that like no one has known what Rocket is. They've called him a rabbit, they've called him a trash panda, triangle-faced monkey. In this movie, they call him a badger a few times. And it's partially because Rocket gets really pissed off when you call him a raccoon. But it's like Rocket accepting what he is in this movie and being okay with that. As we move ahead here, so they're able to foil Adam Warlock. Groot tries to cocoon him at one point, but Adam's able to punch out of it because, yeah, our man breaks out of cocoons. We find out he was taken out of the cocoon too early. Groot, his head survives, and he turns into this kind of spider head thing that reminded me of John Carpenter's The Thing. And which, hey, by the way, included Ego actor Kurt Russell, and that's the exact hair that they used for Ego when he was younger. Okay, so yeah, what's interesting is we see Rocket flashing back while he's dying, right? And we get to see his early surgeries and how like it's just so sad to watch this because you can see his hands trembling in pain and in fear. And I hate to focus on those details because it's really hard to watch, you know, what happens to the animals in this movie. But one of the things that we know from the Xandar booking screen that happened to him is that they gave him like a new like bones, like extended bones in a skeletal structure. So they made him bipedal. They changed in order for a chordate to be bipedal, you have to have a specific backbone that can support a lot of weight. So they gave him like a new backbone, and they gave him opposable thumbs. So that it's almost like Wolverine, right? Like the surgery is extremely painful, both physically and emotionally. And that's something that he has to live with every day. the movie hasn't shied away from that. Beware, the Dread says, I think Rocket has always knew he was a raccoon on Earth for 5 years, but he probably repressed it to not think about his dead friend. That's an interesting thing. Yeah, you got to imagine Rocket on Earth for 5 years, sees other raccoons, and he's like, that's kind of what I am. But doesn't want to think about his past. So we find out the origin of 89P13. That is a tattoo that they put on Rocket's chest, and all the members of Batch 89 have this. Lila is 89Q12. We don't find out the numerical codes for Teefs or for Floor. If you're just joining us, this is a spoiler conversation for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I don't want to ruin the movie for you, so please pause this and you can come back to the stream. It'll be uploaded as a video later. So 89P13 I think is interesting as a 5-digit code that Herbert Wyndham, the High Evolutionary, gives to Rocket, and we'll just call him P13, and then later at the end of the movie he goes 89P13, and to me as a musical theater fan, this feels totally like Javert saying 24601. It's his like lifelong pursuit. I think Rocket is very much a Jean Valjean type character, someone who breaks the law but is like kind of a noble Robin Hood type figure, and does it to protect those he loves. This is on his chest. I thought it might have been on his skull, but it's something on his chest. Okay, so Teefs and Floor. Floor, I think, is like... It reminded me of, what's it called? Babyface from Toy Story. You know, the baby doll head that looks terrifying at first because it's like a robotic spider, but it's actually the sweetest of them. And the fact that her voice has to be covered with this, like, voice box with, like, the jack-o'-lantern zigzag. But, like, you just see these red eyes, too, which immediately freak us out. But it's just an albino rabbit. And it's the sweetest of them. And they care for him. They wipe away his tears. And Rocket's first words, Noah Raskin is the voice of Baby Rocket. Every Rocket that we hear after that is just Bradley Cooper with his voice modulated. But his first words are, hurts. Hurts. And it's just they're able to connect with him and able to comfort him and be his friends. It's just hard. Now, we meet Lila in this scene as well. And Lila was listed as one of Rocket's associates along with Groot on his Xandar booking screen in the 2014 film, which is interesting. It means that either Rocket has told other people about Lila, which doesn't sound likely. The other alternative is that Herbert Wyndham, when he put out the APB on him, said, hey, so he might bring up someone named Lila. He basically told other people about Lila without a thought, which feels even worse. Lila is voiced by Linda Cardellini, who plays Laura Barton in the MCU. Judy Greer actually voices Warpig later in the movie, so they get a lot of the Avengers spouses in this. As of now, Laura Barton has been established as Mockingbird, from Hawkeye, so she used to be an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. as well. But Linda Cardellini has a history working with James Gunn. Her name was in the opening credits. I don't know if you saw that, but yeah, she was on the Scooby-Doo films. She played Velma. She was in the movie Super. So, moving ahead, they move on to go to OrgoCorp, and we get this interesting moment where Peter Quill is like, after we see another flashback with them. Before we get to the Peter Quill moment, big reveal here. We find out that Herbert Wyndham created the Sovereign, which answers a lot of questions that we had about the Sovereign, like why they didn't really have an analog in the Marvel Comics. It seemed to be an original creation of James Gunn. Well, James Gunn's plan here was to say that they were intended to be an artificial, genetically over-obsessed about bloodlines, race of people with, like, golden skin. And yeah, it's because they were, like, you know, an aesthetically beautiful creation of Herbert Wyndham, the High Evolutionary. And that's why their planet, I don't know if you remember, the Sovereign planet was like a chain of like 5 or 6 planets that were just kind of like grouped together like one of those marbles that hit back and forth. It doesn't really make sense from an orbital perspective, but that's why. It was like an artificial construction the way Counter Earth was. And I like this. And this includes the idea of Herbert Wyndham creating Adam Warlock, who's supposed to be the apogee, and he calls him the Warlock, which is similar to the comics. So the High Evolutionary in the comics, Herbert Wyndham is considered Marvel's ultimate geneticist. He's Herbert Wyndham. He was like a genetic student in the 1930s. He's known as an associate, or at least someone who follows in the footsteps of Mr. Sinister, Nathaniel Essex of the X-Men villains, who kind of has a similar goal. I think he's very similar to Red Skull in the MCU for reasons we'll get to. But I think he also has an important history with Wundagore Mountain. That's where his base is, and that the character of Bova, who's one of his like bovine creations, is who nursed Wanda and Pietro Maximoff as babies. So I don't think they're going to get to that history in the MCU, but the guy's not dead. He's still out there somewhere. I missed a few super chats, so I'm going to try to scroll back. I'm sorry if I missed some. I'm going to try to get to all of them. Andy Kaplan says, were you disappointed they didn't touch on the Celestials and your theories? Not disappointed. I still think that may be canonically true for the universe, that like that yellow fluid could have been derived from Celestials. Wasn't answered in this movie. I didn't really need it to be. Yeah, so that was just the way I thought about that. Now seems like a good time to thank the person who sponsored this episode. One Shot Energy. So we've never had a live stream sponsor before, so I'm gonna do a live read of this, but like part of the reason that we're able to stay profitable is because we were able to get some brands sponsoring this, and one of our favorite partners that we've been working with are our friends at One Shot. They create these like focus chews that are great. They're like taffy chews, and I just want to give them a shout out. This flavor, I don't know if you saw this, they have like the new Rockstars logo printed on their bag, and this is called Blue Dungeon Raspberry. It's based on the preferences of the Deep Dive and the new Rockstars staff. It's a focus chew. So, it's caffeine free, a great booster while I'm researching a video we're about to go live. One Shot Energy Chews are a healthy and convenient energy boosting supplement candy. They're a nice alternative for coffee or energy drinks. They come in caffeinated, non-caffeinated varieties, all with the vitamins and nootropics for focus and energy. To check them out for yourself or to support the Deep Dive channel, go to oneshotenergy.com/new rockstars for 10% off your order. All right, so now you're going to see me chew this focus chew, and you're going to see how focused I get for the rest of this live stream. All right, y'all excited for this? I'm excited for this. Okay, so sorry, it's a taffy chew, so takes some chewing to get through. So we're talking about Herbert Wyndham. He created the Sovereign. I like this, the way that James Gunn was able to tie this in, have these two connected in this way. I do think both Aisha and Adam Warlock got a little nerfed in this movie. I would have liked seeing more from them, but I like that he's able to like kind of complete their story in this movie at the same time. Okay, let's talk about the OrgoScope, OrgoCorp. I love the design of this movie. I'm still chewing. It's almost like, it's gum. I do feel more focused. Oh my god. Alright. So OrgoCorp is basically Herbert Wyndham's front. This is almost chilling the way OrgoCorp exists in the universe, because everybody who has a cybernetic implant that enhances him some way is implied to get it from this manufacturer. And that includes pretty much all the Guardians. Nebula, Gamora, Peter Quill, all of them have cybernetic implants. And it all comes from here. This is a factory where it happens. So this factory is living matter, Nebula tells us. It's like flesh. And we don't really understand the science of it that much, but it's all powered by this yellow fluid that courses through it, through these hoses and fountains. And yeah, I still think it's true that this could be celestial blood or celestial brain fluid. I think it's a fun callback, the fact that the Abelisks had this same color blood, and I think it all kind of comes from this same place. The Abelisks, we find out, were other creations of Herbert Wyndham. Also a fun implication, the fact that the Abelisks were feeding on the Sovereign's Annulax or Harbillary batteries, which tells us that Herbert Wyndham he's not even able to create a peaceful coexisting race and biodiversity. They're all going to be attacking each other. He thinks he can create peace, but no one can. It's nature. It's unwieldy. So he's been as successful at creating biodiversity as the Celestials have been. And by that, I mean, they're all failures. The difference is, like, he didn't start in existence as a god. He aspired it. He aspired to be a god, which is just, like, messed up. Oh, one detail I didn't point out about the High Evolutionary. I really love this. So just his mask, the way it folds over his face, and you can see his tag stretching over his helmet. Just his skin. It's so gross. But this metallic piece was on Herbert Wyndham's head in the flashbacks, but over his skin. So basically, if you're able to put two and two together as you're watching this, you realize this mask is pulled over something that's underneath it. So you know something happened to him in the meantime. This isn't like his face was replaced with something else, or that this is a facelift. This is like pulled over something that is underneath. Just kind of a nice little costume design detail that they did with him. So they head on to OrgoCorp, and it's just like a fascinating location. I could have spent an entire movie in this place. I thought it was really cool. And it's just like, it's pretty gross. And I think the fact that Herbert Wyndham was able to do this, like, yeah, his experimentation on Rocket was considered illegal, but he still got away with it the way, like, people can just move to other countries and do horrible testing on animals and do it there. I think everyone kind of looks the other way because they appreciate having their life-expanding implants from this company. I like the commentary of that. So we run back into the Ravagers in this movie, and we find out that's where Gamora has been. Before we get to that, though, there's this fun little moment. I don't know if you guys saw this, where, you know, Peter kind of explains he doesn't need to go back to hang out with his grandfather, Jason. And we find out his grandfather's name is Jason. That's where Peter got his middle name of Jason. They're passing through these plasma screens to get to OrgoCorp, and he's like, Peter says that people die at the age of 50 on Earth, which, as we know, is not true. And that was even less true in the 1980s. Fun fact, life expectancy was actually longer in 1989 than it is today. And that's partially because of, you know, COVID and other horrible things happening to people now. And it's also more of just a commentary that healthcare hasn't gotten that much better since then. It's gotten better in some ways. Whatever. People are going to yell at me now. But I'm just saying, like, look up the life expectancy now. It's not looking great. But we don't die at age 50. Peter has no right to say that, except for the fact that Peter was at the Battle of Endgame, and he saw Tony Stark die, and Tony Stark was around 50 years old when he died. So I think he's saying, oh, that's about as long as people live on Earth. That's why he thinks people are dying. So Drax is eating Zarg nuts. That's a snack food he was eating before. And there's a little moment where Mantis is like, wait, so you're going to die? And I believe you can see him nod. Check him out. Yeah, you see how he nods over there? Which I just think was so funny that, like, Drax is like, oh yeah, Peter Quill's not long for this world. I haven't taken some super chats. I'm sorry. I'm going to try to take some real quick. I believe I saw one. It was redacted, which means it's probably offensive. I don't know. It just tweeted at me. Beware the Dread says, maybe OrgoCorp is another experiment. He could be trying to make his own Celestial. He could be using the name as a front for the business. Yeah, I think he is using it as a front. I think on a thematic place, Herbert Wyndham is trying to be a Celestial, and I think he resents the Celestials. He calls the Skull of Nowhere a dead god, or he says, there is no god, that's why I stepped in. I think that's his ultimate folly. Crooked Super Chat says, this movie was the most beautiful encapsulation of self-love and family, finding purpose where you are and not overvaluing where you've been. Beautiful. Agreed, Crooked. That's a really great sentiment. I think that's great. I'm going to try to keep track of the Super Chats here. Okay, so the Ravagers show up, and the Ravagers, they brought back most of them. You know, we've lost Michael Clark Duncan since 2017, but we get the others. Kruger shows up. A lot of people are like, who is this sorcerer? Well, he was in the post-credit scene of Volume 2. He is a Lem race, and in Earth 619, Kruger is the alternate reality Sorcerer Supreme. So they just brought him into this reality. He's just a sorcerer in the MCU who exists in space. But he does have this Ravager, like, necklace. Let's see. And I think it's interesting that there's just a little green gem on it. You can definitely see a bit of green there, which is not the Time Stone, but, like, it's his version of, like, the way he decked it out to look like the Eye of Agamotto. I think is interesting. Mainframe in this movie was voiced in Volume 2 by Miley Cyrus, but here it's voiced by Tara Strong. That's why she sounded like Miss Minutes to you. She kind of comes over the speaker and she's like, hey y'all, we're gonna be born pretty soon. Martin X is played by Michael Rosenbaum, who actually looks a bit more like Michael Rosenbaum in this movie. He's a friend of James Gunn, played Lex Luthor in Smallville. Great actor. He alone was the reason I watched Smallville. I mean, I loved a lot about Smallville. Michael Rosenbaum, freaking great. That guy should have a much bigger career than he does. I think he's awesome. So I think I could have gotten more from the Ravagers in this movie. All they really do is give them Gamora and give them spacesuits. I've seen it 3 times. Not really sure why it has to be the Ravagers who do it. I think they just do that to bring them in so that they can explain where Gamora goes. We get another flashback to what Herbert Wyndham did to Rocket. And I'm going to point out here, yeah, you see this metallic tag? That was on his face already. So that was kind of what was tugging his face back to keep him young. So the future face mask has to go over his entire skull and then like stretch across, and then it connects with this little like clip. I don't know about you guys, but this process is very similar to me to Terrigen Mist in Terrigenesis. I know it's not Terrigenesis. I know if we tweet James Gunn about this, he's going to say that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle that he put in there is not an inhuman. I don't think that was the point of this movie, but I just think it's interesting. You put characters in a chamber filled with mist and they rapidly evolve into something new. To me, that just reminded me a lot of Terrigenesis. I just think you got to be careful with mist in the Marvel world, because we're all waiting to see how Inhuman Mist or Terrigen Mist can come in. So Rocket is able to see how this process is flawed. It's like, what's it called? I'm trying to remember the name of the acid. It's like some kind of like a protein. It's like a beta amino protein or whatever that causes them to turn violent. And Rocket's able to see it through a faulty filter system, which throws off Herbert Wyndham. It really messes him up. He's like, well, wait, I didn't think of that. It completely shifted the power dynamic between the characters in a way that unsettled Wyndham for the rest of his life. Something I created was able to tell me something I didn't know. But like, the ego of that, I think any parent could tell you. I'm not a parent yet. One day I will be. And I think it's like what Yoda says in The Last Jedi. We are what they grow beyond. Like, it's the role of the older generation to learn something new from the younger generation. If they don't teach us something new, then we haven't done our jobs. The point is to be surprised by someone who teaches us something new. And I think Wyndham later comes around to that and tries to replicate that ability to have intelligent, creative, problem-solving, critical thinking thought in other beings that he constructs. But in this moment, he's like upset by it rather than like excited by it, which I think tells you everything you need to know about him. So they head down to the OrgoCorp structure, and they're wearing these multicolored suits. A lot of people are like, oh, these are Among Us, but James Gunn has confirmed that these are based on the 2001 A Space Odyssey spacesuits, which are red and yellow. And the music here is pretty great. Gamora joins them, and remember, Gamora has no memories with the others. She was the 2014 variant who joined Nebula and Thanos' forces to the Battle of Earth in Avengers Endgame. So she didn't go through Peter with Guardians Volume 1 or Volume 2 or the events of Infinity War. She's just like the darkest version of herself, or not darkest, but just like the most self-serving, and she doesn't understand anything Groot says. But we all learn to interpret and understand Groot by the end of the movie. I just think the structure is so great. And yeah, I think the fact that there are these like yellow hoses, and when they cut into this thing, it releases yellow blood, is a reference. You can see the blood floating around here. I think it is the same fluid that they drain from Nowhere in Volume 1. And I think it's the same fluid that courses through the obelisks. I think that much is guaranteed. We get this great moment where like where they're talking about he's trying to profess his love to her, but she's not hearing him, and part of it is because he's on like the group line. And I think this is a good example of when James Gunn's absurdist humor in these movies is on point. I'll be the first to admit that like not all of James Gunn's humor hits. To me, sometimes it's not like too sophomoric. I think it's more just like it goes a beat too long. I saw this sometimes in Peacemaker, where it's just like characters bantering back and forth, and it's just like we're slowing down the plot just to have Steve Agee and Chiwetel Ejiofor bicker at each other, and that's just the scene, and it's not moving the plot forward at all. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Every time he does that in this movie, it works for me. It may not work for you, but here I think the idea that the suits are just misaligned with the wrong colors, I think is just like classic Douglas Adams style absurdism. Like, why would you design the suits that way unless there's some creature who just sees color differently? And maybe that's the case. The way we see color is just because of the way our rods and cones are aligned. So orange to a human may not look like orange to another race that exists in the cosmos. So I think that's just like the idea of it here is like what red is not what, but I mean, at least the colors should be the same, right? Red should be red. The red button should be for whatever the red suit is. But I like how Drax kind of points out that red is green, green is red. And I think he is a gray-skinned character in the movies, but in the comics he's green. He is green. James Gunn changed him to gray because he said there are already too many green characters, referring to Gamora. So while this is all happening, I'm just kind of fast forwarding through this here. They get inside. Nathan Fillion plays Master Karja. Now, Nathan Fillion cameoed as one of the blue skin aliens in the Kiln in Volume 1. He also played Simon Williams, Yahya Abdul-Mateen's character, now in the MCU, but Wonder Man. And he played him in deleted scenes that were movie posters in Missouri as the goo was going through in Volume 2. David, Super Chats, only watched the first trailer, so happy about it. Past few movies gave us so much away, and watching all the trailer breakdowns after was still great. Loved Rocket naming himself and knowing nowhere being mobilized. Can't believe they gave those away. You're right. They did show nowhere being mobilized in one of the trailers. One of the later TV promos. People corrected me in the comments. I totally effed up there. I said it was Michael Clark Duncan. It was Ving Rhames, of course, who played Charlie 27. I'm an idiot. I can't believe I messed that up. Oh, God, I'm not going to make that mistake again. Noob Master asks, how would you rate the first official F-bomb? I think we could have done something more with it. My favorite F-bomb in a Marvel PG-13 movie was, of course, X-Men First Class, when Wolverine says it to Magneto and Charles Xavier. This one, I just think James Gunn didn't consider it a ceremonious moment the way we do. The Orgo sentries, the security forces are overseen by James Gunn's wife. Of course, her character is known as Quoll, which I believe stands for like kick-ass woman overlord or something like that. And I think it's totally fine that Jennifer Holland has a role in this movie because, I think people are just looking for reasons to be upset with James Gunn right now because they're mad about him taking over DC or firing Henry Cavill or whatever it was. And it doesn't take away the fact that he's still a really, really good filmmaker. And I think I'm excited for what he's going to do with DC. Filmmakers always put their family and friends in movies. Steven Spielberg does it all the time. J.J. Abrams does it all the time. David Fincher does it. Zack Snyder references his friends and family in movies all the time. This is just what directors do. Every director has a right to just kind of put who they want in. I think Jennifer Holland's really fun in this movie. She gets shot in the leg and screams, and that's the last we see of her. I think that was great. Daniela Melchior plays a role. She plays Ura, who is the archivist who takes them down to this place to find the 89P13 sphere. And again, I think the fact that this whole facility runs on this goo is really fun. Like when he picks up the sphere, it has this kind of yellow goo to it, and I think that's just how the whole thing functions. In this scene, we get some like meta lines from James Gunn. James Gunn says like how Nebula mentions how her eyes were implants given to her by Thanos, and that is not something to compliment. Peter Quill's like, oh, he gave you a good set. But yeah, it's not like a compliment. One cool thing that I noticed is this logo. The logo for OrgoCorp looks like, if you watch Game of Thrones, the flayed man logo of House Bolton, right? And it reminds us of the way Rocket was kind of like strung up in those stirrups. It also reminds us of the Vitruvian Man, the Leonardo da Vinci, which I'm sure is what Herbert Wyndham was going for with that. But it's just so like messed up now. we just picture these creatures that have been strung up, drawn and quartered. Rosh says, Mr. Voss, big fan. Glad to see you here. Love the movie. Felt like Rocket coming out of his coma was very anticlimactic, as if Rocket barely had any lines after this. Did you get that feeling or just me? I think Rocket's biggest moments happened after he came out of the coma, personally. I think a lot of people were just set up to think that Rocket was going to die, and I think that was more of just an unfortunate thing in the marketing. I don't think we needed to see any of the shots of him like they could have skipped anything like, oh, Rocket might be dead, and I think we wouldn't have had those expectations. Peter Quill recaps the events of Avengers Endgame and Infinity War. And this is true, just meta commentary by James Gunn. And I think James Gunn has said in interviews that he's kind of annoyed with the way other Marvel directors took his characters and just like killed some of them off or put them in impossible situations to bring them back together. And you feel the weight of that while watching this movie. It does feel like a strain to bring Gamora back into the picture. Like, where did she go? I guess she joined the Ravagers. I think James Gunn did a pretty good job with it. But I think the weakest parts of the movie structurally are him trying to do the math to clean up the way the universe was left after like Thor Love and Thunder and Avengers Endgame and those things. Not taking anything anything away from those movies. I just think it was clearly a challenge for James Gunn to figure it together. But I thought he did it in a fun way with humor. He, Peter Quill's referencing like, I lost my temper, I punched Thanos in the face. So he's taking responsibility for his part. I mean, every one of the Avengers and Guardians made mistakes in the way they tried to fight Thanos. You can't really blame Peter Quill specifically. But there's a little thing that Chris Pratt does that I love. He like tosses this sphere. I can see if I can get a shot of it here. And that's something he did with the orb in Volume 1 when he was like goofing around with it. And I believe Chris Pratt on set does like just does this kind of thing just as business to move his hands with, but they had to like leave it in. Because like they had to like justify it, but he drops the orb in the first one. It contains an Infinity Stone, and he drops it, and yeah, there he goes. And that's just something he does. I like that he called that back. Like he's talking about the responsibility he played in the Infinity Wars conflict, and the moment he almost dropped the Power Stone in the first movie, he's remembering that and being like, "Yeah, oh right, I've learned nothing. I've learned nothing." So this is just like it's very good character development at this part of the movie. I really, really much enjoy this. Again, I could have spent more of the movie in this place. I just thought it was bizarre. One thing that gets pointed out here in the welcome video screens is that Herbert Wyndham has been at this for 300 years. They say for the past 300 years, OrgoCorp has helped the universe. Like 300 years is a long amount of time. He's an old character. He might be older than Thanos. No, Thanos is probably older. I would imagine Eternals. This is their name. He's probably older. But it's just like we still don't really know what Herbert Wyndham's origin was, like how long he's been at this. I personally think he could be linked with Kang. He maybe made a deal with Kang. Because he also had a sound recording of something that was 5,000 years old, and then I believe he translated it from Latin, but Latin was not spoken 5,000 years ago. The Roman Empire started in the first millennia BC, right? I think it was around like 300 BC is when the empire really began, or the story of like the two brothers Romulus and Remus who founded Rome, according to that legend, that was not 3000 BC. By 3000 BC, we're talking about the Egyptians, which far predated. Like to the Romans, the Egyptians were like ancient history, So like I think the dates were a little weird, but it just made me wonder like how old is Herbert Wyndham and what periods of history is he pulling from? Is he even Terran? Because he said, I visited your planet at some point in the history, which makes me think that he's not originally Terran. He comes from some other planet or some other reality, maybe. So I really thought Drax was going to die in the scene. I was really worried. You see Karja back here about to shoot him. I thought Nathan Fillion was really fun in this. I also just like this detail of the fact that, Peter Quill and Nebula debate over how violent to be, and Peter Quill's like, no, I'm going to use my heart to connect with her, and I'm going to convince her to let me into the interface. And then he's like, no, I'm just going to control all their suits. So it's not like Peter Quill, he was able to accurately play this scene and not like try to connect with people emotionally, because he knew that these people would have no kind of emotional connection to him. Instead, he uses a tactic that he learned from Rocket when they escaped the kiln in Volume 1, which I really love. He just causes everyone to float around, and they're able to escape that way, just by taking control of their suits. Okay, moving on to one of the most heartbreaking scenes of the movie. This was released ahead of the release, and this is where we find out how Rocket got his name. He got his name because earlier when Herbert Wyndham was with him on the deck of his lab and he was able to look out on the constructing Counter-Earth, and he saw a rocket escape the planet. And I think that's fascinating because Rocket's dream is not to settle on Counter-Earth. He's looking at someone who's departing Counter-Earth. His greatest dream is to leave that planet's atmosphere, and that's where Rocket comes from. I just thought that was such a beautiful, beautiful thing. Lila, she gets her name Lila, and we get this great moment where Floor's like, Lila. And it's just like, I came home and I hugged Darla after this movie. She's like, why are you hugging me? You're freaking me out. Teefs. I don't know if you guys caught this. Teefs cannot blink naturally. He has these little like robotic eyelid things that control how much moisture his pupils get, which I just think was really messed up. Our man can't even blink on his own. Like they have to cybernetically control when he blinks. Now, fun fact about this walrus figure, if you rewatch Volume 2, when Yondu is in that brothel on Contraxia, on the background, on the brothel wall, is a painting of a character named Walrus, who's a collaborator of Rocket in the comics. He's a walrus-type creature. I don't know if it's this guy. Maybe it's this guy. I like to think he might be connected, but no one other than Rocket and Herbert Wyndham would know who he is. Um, so it's just really, really sad in this moment, the way they connect. And Rocket has this line of, he wants to escape into the forever and beautiful sky and create flying machines with his friends. And he's referring to these other three. But he's able to achieve those dreams with his other found family, with the Guardians of the Galaxy. And he did say in Volume 2, when they were going through the quantum asteroid field, I was engineered to pilot a spacecraft. And so that's what he's saying in that moment. Like, what is my purpose? Well, my purpose is at least to be a pilot. And then he says, Forever and Beautiful Sky, there was that one moment that I think was a very important moment that I think a lot of people forget about in Volume 2, where Peter Quill listens to his daddy Rocket say, or his daddy Yondu say, I control it with my heart. And he remembers back, he flashes back to these moments with Yondu, with Meredith Quill when they were both listening to the playlist. And there's this random, like, Dan Harmon Community-style cutscene of Rocket, Peter Quill, and Baby Groot just with their jetpacks flying through a bright, beautiful blue sky. And he did achieve that in so many ways with his found family. So I think it's beautiful that he was able to achieve his dreams. But like so many characters in the MCU, he loses his first family and has to discover a second family with the Avengers or the Guardians of the Galaxy. We saw that with Natasha, right? Natasha said she had never had a family. She told this to Steve Rogers in Endgame, but we find out in Black Widow that she did have a family. She just had to leave it behind. Okay, so we've been doing this for a while. I'm going to keep going. We're going to go all the way through this movie. Again, my Easter egg breakdown, a much more streamlined, less rambly version of this, where I don't screw up Ving Rhames and Michael Clark Duncan. Is going to be on the New Rockstars main channel later today, and I think it's going to be a really polished, great video. Our editors are hard working on it right now. Okay, so Gamora has an interesting line where she talks about Herbert Wyndham and his reputation. And she says some corners of the galaxy consider him a god, and she says that he created the Sovereign, the Animen, and the Zeronians. Now, the Animen in the comics are another group of like animal hybrids that he creates, so they get a shout out here. The Zeronians actually showed up in the MCU before. That's like the pale-raced figures who have plates over their mouths that appeared alongside the Collector in the post-credit scene of Thor: The Dark World, and they've been in the background of all the Guardians movies, so they kind of get a shout out too. In the comics, they have like solar-absorbing skin. Yeah, so now it's just implied that like that was an efficient thing that Herbert Wyndham gave them. So we get this moment where there's like a callback where Drax is like showing that he still has not learned exactly what a metaphor is or an analogy is. He just thinks that Gamora her head is like a lily pad because it's a screen. He hasn't learned anything, but they're trying to tell Peter that he just needs to go home and live with his family. Wagenbach says, anybody else a little disappointed that nobody died, or am I evil? Well, that doesn't make you evil. I just think your expectations were set up to think that the only way that you can give a conclusion to a character is by killing them off, and I think there are other ways that you can give conclusions, more satisfying ways to give conclusions if characters just move on to another part of their life. St. Ivan says, is there a reason Star-Lord didn't use his mask in this movie? I thought they never showed it in the trailers because they were saving a reveal of him using this mask from Annihilation. I didn't have that theory, Ivan. I didn't really miss his mask, but I agree that in that moment where he was space gliding, he could have used his mask. I don't know where his mask was in this movie. Maybe it was a deleted scene, but I agree with you. Like, he definitely needed his mask in this movie practically several times. Rosh says, okay, yeah, I already got your super chat. I'm sorry if I'm missing any super chats, everybody. I'm trying to catch all of them. So they realize that Rocket has been like tortured by the High Evolutionary, but they still don't have the pass key to get past it. And so they go to Counter Earth. Counter Earth is something from the comics. Herbert Wyndham creates it to create like a replica version of Earth, and he places it like a microsecond out of dimensional orbit from Earth. So it's really just like in a slight like a shadow dimension that's right adjacent to Earth, but he hides it from Earth, basically in Earth's shadow in the multiverse. In this, it's like a place in space that you can go to. It just hasn't been discovered yet. So they head to Counter Earth, and it is kind of a Planet of the Apes sort of thing. There's a Statue of Liberty that's like Herbert Wyndham holding a monkey, it looks like. They go straight to this neighborhood. It's just interesting that James Gunn... the coordinates are in this movie. I mentioned them earlier in the broadcast. We haven't translated the coordinates yet, but we were able to determine them, and we'll spend the next few days trying to translate them. They land it right in the neighborhood. You can't land it like in a field next to it, but it just shows that they don't really understand or care about this group of people. But Herbert Wyndham designed this neighborhood to reflect the Earth that he had last visited. So it's the 1980s, right? It's all 1980s clothes, cars, accessories, that sort of thing. These are the people that Herbert Wyndham evolved rapidly in this mist chamber, without the issue of like the proteins making them violent. But life finds a way to make people an asshole, and that's what happened here with this group of people. Is like, it doesn't take much to trigger them. It's not just this group of people; they have right to be pissed off at the Guardians here. But they see like a group of like a squid dealing drugs to a bunch of cockroach-headed people, and then it goes bad. Like, such is the case of human nature when you don't have like really, really smart engineers giving people problems to advance, or giving people solutions to problems to advance their societal ills so that people can live comfortably and happy. Engineers, I think, are the most important job, and teachers. Engineers and teachers, most important job for any civilized society. Not lawyers. I guess doctors are pretty important too. And YouTubers, let's not forget them. There's just this, it's interesting that it's 1980s though, because, it just shows that Rocket as a kit was probably taken from Earth in the 1980s. And that the timeline is similar to that of Peter Quill being abducted from Earth. Drax pegs this girl in the face with a kickball. It's one thing that Nebula says about this planet is she calls it the gravity of Xandar -1. So Xandar is kind of like the central unit standard of how gravity works on these different planets. I just found that to be an interesting detail. Now, when they go inside this house, there's this amazing music that plays. And the music, I'm not going to play it here. You can listen to it on just go find it on YouTube on your own. But it is called Koinu no Carnival. It's from Minute Waltz by Hammock. It's a Vocaloid track. So it's a synthesizer software where they mix in like at least 15 different Vocaloid creators represented here. At some point you hear Cosmo howling in the middle of it. It's just this crazy, crazy wild song, but it's so cool. It's such a jam. And this is like a whole community of people online who love this kind of music, and they totally got represented here because James Gunn is proving that he's one of them. I just love everything about the home here, like the different growing pain style photos. The wallpaper is like Richard Scarry animalistic type wallpaper. There's these little figurines on the shelves. There's just so much. This blue cola is just like delicious and wonderful. It's just like the attention to detail was incredible. And then we get our first F-bomb where Peter says, "Open the effing door." This is our first like uncensored F-bomb in the MCU. Because, like, we've had censored F-bombs before where Peter Quill was like, or not Peter Quill, but Senator Stern said, "F you, Mr. Stark." Nick Fury said "mother effer" when he got dusted. And then in all the Spider-Man movies, there was always some kind of fun, like, edit or car horn that cut off the F-bomb. And the thing is, in PG-13 movies, you're technically allowed to get away with one F-bomb, but there's a lot of caveats. Like, it can't be in the opening minutes of the movie. I'm pretty sure, I used to work on a talk show, and so I shared an office with the standards and practices team, and there are all these like weird little rules that like you'd be amazed how detailed it is. But the MPAA is very similar to that, where I think if they were going to have excessive gore or violence, they just don't want it to be in the opening part of the movie to give like parents who are like easily triggered a chance to take their kids out of there. So I think that's why Sam Raimi had to change the opening sequence of Multiverse of Madness away from Wanda beheading Mordo, and instead had the big slaughter happen in the middle of the movie about like an hour, 20 minutes in, just to kind of like set the tone of the movie that there would be some violence. And then it's crazy. It's just how the MPAA looks at it. So this F-bomb comes in, I think, exactly like an hour, 10 minutes into the movie. I don't think you could have that at the beginning of the movie. I'm pretty sure the one where Wolverine says it in First Class is about like an hour or something into the movie. I'm going to go through this even more frame by frame in the new Rockstars breakdown. There are some other Easter eggs that happen here. A little detail. I don't know if you guys caught this. The traffic sign in the neighborhood, it is not like normal rounded human heads. It's like animal heads, like a giraffe head or a weasel head or that kind of thing. Again, the attention to detail is just bonkers on Counter-Earth. Gamora is left drunkenly on Earth. She finds this Polaroid. Again, Jason Quill gets a shout out with Meredith Quill. Yeah, I want to know who was taking that Polaroid, right? Because the three of them were in the picture. Who else was in that picture? Probably not Ego. I don't think Peter ever knew Ego, but someone else was taking that Polaroid. Also in his backpack are his Alf cards. Alien life form Alf from the sitcom, that old goofball. He keeps showing up more and more. He is Marvel canon, guys. It's just so bizarre. There was an Alf comic book that was in Peter's backpack, and I Am Groot. So yeah, we get like increasing levels of flashback, and it's just really sad in this movie. We learn more and more. Finally, Rocket, he learns that they are never intended to go to Counter Earth. He uses that key card he constructed to free Lila and the others, but immediately Lila is blam, killed. And it's the saddest moment of the movie, I think, to me. It was just really hard to watch this scene, specifically the way they acted out that otter's death was just really, really hard to watch every time. And it's tough, you know. Herbert Wyndham only values Rocket for his brain. Something's about his brain, the way it was designed. It's something that Herbert Wyndham himself did not do. The other members of Batch 89 are disposable to him. Rocket scratches up his face and he escapes. I think that whole sequence was one of my favorite all-time sequences of the MCU. It was hard to watch, but I just thought it was so well done, so well paced. Meanwhile, Herbert Wyndham, we find out, I don't think you're going to see it here, but he has these new kids that he's breeding. One of them is Kai Zen's character, whose name is Phyla, and she is Phyla Vell in this movie. And Phyla Vell is, in the comics, a companion to Moondragon, who's Drax's daughter. And Phyla Vell is the artificially created daughter of Mar-Vell, who is Carol Danvers' successor, the Kree warrior who's like Captain Marvel. And she becomes Quasar in the Annihilation Conquest storyline. So they're bringing in a kid. It seems like they're setting up more possible young Avengers in the future, but that's basically who this character is. But instead, they kind of make her one of Herbert Wyndham's creations. And as smart as these kids are, they have like perfect metabolisms, and they seem like forever happy. They don't have that X factor, that missing ingredient. And it's because Herbert Wyndham cannot create that. He needs a higher power, the hands that guide the hands, to do that. Herbert Wyndham starts to discuss his evil plan with Peter Quill as they go to talk to him. I like how Peter just cuts him off. He's like, I can't sit through another one of these conversations where someone whose dad didn't love, or his mother didn't love him, is rationalizing why he needs to conquer the universe. Because he sat through this conversation with Ego. He was there on Titan when Thanos was explaining to Doctor Strange. He's like, you're just as bad as the others. It's just not interesting to me anymore. It's boring, and I like how he cuts him off. Let's see. I'm sorry. I keep jumping over to look at some super chats. What's most horrifying to me about the scene is that Peter Quill very quickly convinces Herbert Wyndham that he's been unsuccessful on Counter Earth. He's like, yeah, I saw a drug deal go bad, and Herbert Wyndham's like, you're right. Time to cancel it and move on. Like, the fact that he views this whole planet with all these families on it as disposable this way just makes me think, how many times has he done this? And yeah, the threat to Aisha is real. He might really kill the Sovereign. He's just killed planet after planet. And I think Chukwudi Iwiji is so good in that movie. He's just so unhinged. And you can see his arc throughout the movie as he starts kind of in control, but he has that little screw loose at the beginning, and as the movie just goes on and on and on, he just gets more and more unhinged. And it's really hard for an actor to do that on a film because they shoot these things out of order. He has to know exactly where in the movie he is when he's shooting a scene to be like, okay, what percentage of unhinged am I? And compared to his performance that he gave in Peacemaker, where he's just a very controlled character, like, I thought his acting was brilliant in this film. Wagenbach asks, off topic, but when is the Break Room back? Break Room's going to have a special episode later this afternoon on the new Rockstars channel. They got some big announcements, so be sure to tune into that. Sorry, I'm checking to see if there's any other super chats. Okay, I haven't seen other ones, so I'm just going to keep going. Okay, so yeah, he nukes this planet. He completely destroys it and leaves. And I just thought that was so sad, as you know, all the people who are on this planet deserve so much better than that. And it just shows that this guy is the real deal. He says what he means. So Adam Warlock shows up with Blurp after he gets Blurp from that Ravager he prematurely killed on Nowhere. And Gamora ends up like, you know, the War Pig shows up to try to get Gamora to find out where 89P13 is. He kills War Pig. It's just like, Adam Warlock is just on his own path in this movie. It's really fun to see. But then, yeah, I don't know if you guys felt Aisha dies so fast in this movie. Like, you really see her briefly on that golden ship in the background here, and then boom, she's gone. Like, yeah, I just think James Gunn might have had more plans for these characters, and then just had to like rewrite or kind of dial them back in the movie. So the team gets split up. Drax, Nebula, and Mantis get on the ship and almost freeze when like they're exposed to space, setting up like the threat that Peter Quill is in the final act. Meanwhile, Peter Quill tackles Teal, the recorder, out the planet. The actor who plays Teal is really fun in this movie. This was like, I think, one of my favorite moments in the movie where Groot jumps out and basically grabs them mid-flight and extends his branches to make parachute wings to, you know, like Buzz Lightyear falling with style down to the planet. And to me, this reminded me a lot of the Mark 7 Tony Stark armor catching Tony mid-fall as he fell from Avengers Tower or Stark Tower in the 2012 Avengers and turned into the suit. Like, it was just such a cool moment. Like, Groot, Swole Groot was really fun. And I think what made Groot swole in this movie isn't that it was like thick, like bark muscle. It was just extendable branches that can be done and that can do all these cool things. So that's, I think, what was most impressive to me about Groot. So, yeah, this is Kai Zen's character. She plays Phi Lavelle. I'm skipping ahead a little bit here. Okay, so Rocket almost dies. I'm trying to get to the exact frame here. Okay. The most interesting scene in the movie, and I'm going to be breaking this down in a separate video on the new Rockstars channel, but I have so many questions about this, and I think what's most interesting is that Rocket feels he has no purpose. Lila tells him he has to stay behind. So this is like very similar to the afterlives that we see in Black Panther with the Ancestral Plane, the Duat in Moon Knight, Valhalla in Thor Love and Thunder, the Soul Realm in Infinity War where Thanos goes. Like, the MCU keeps doing this, having these afterlives with like little vestiges, little shadows of things that we see in their lives. In this case, this is the setting where Rocket spent all of his time with his three friends. So this is what this limbo stage looks like. It might remind you of King's Cross and Deathly Hallows. Yeah, he's ready to move on. And to me, I would have loved if we could hear like Unchained Melody here, because this reminded me a lot of Ghost, which is a fascinating film. It's not just, it's both a comedy, a horror, a tragedy, a romance, and it's directed by the co-director of the comedy Airplane. That movie should not have been successful, but it was. It was one of the best movies of all time. So Rocket is like ready to leave with Lila, ready to move on, and she says no. So this is like different. It's not like the character in his own subconscious saying that it's my job isn't done. The forces from beyond are telling him that he still has a purpose, which is, I think, a big step forward in the MCU mythology. It's saying that there is some higher power, because Lila says, there are the hands that made us, and then there are the hands that guide the hands. What does that mean? Well, I think it's the implication of a higher power. There are the hands that made us. There's referring to Herbert Wyndham, right? Constructed him. But there were some other hands that guided those hands, for better or for worse, right? And in Rocket's case, I think his brain, from the moment he was conceived in an embryonic stage, was blessed with a unique brain that gave him the capacity to grow into a form that could be one of the most important Marvel heroes that we have. James Gunn has said that this is a secret protagonist of the trilogy. I think it's not a secret anymore. Rocket Raccoon is necessary for the future in very, very important ways. What is his role to play? Maybe we'll see it in Secret Wars. We'll find out. But I think Rocket, before Herbert Wyndham laid a finger on him, was blessed with this unique situation in his brain. That's why he didn't cower in fear with the other ones. There's something about this young raccoon who's from North America that some higher power. Now, who are the higher powers in the Marvel Universe? You know, Phase 4 has given us a lot of answers on this. We have the omnipotent city gods in Thor Love and Thunder. We have Eternity, who might still be around, might have transformed into Chris Hemsworth's daughter in Thor Love and Thunder. We have the Celestials, but the Celestials just seem to be part of this like cosmic reproduction cycle. They don't really seem to have some kind of spiritual essence to them. The MCU hasn't really suggested like a spiritual essence, and I get why they're kind of holding back. They don't want to like pick one correct denomination. I think Mephisto is going to make his appearance at some point, but I think he's going to be the representative of all the grief. So who is the counterbalance to Mephisto in the Marvel mythology? We could talk about the one above all. We could talk about Gaia. We could talk about Infinity, like the opposite of eternity, right? Infinity is this female character, or this. It's I don't think it's gendered, but it's just this kind of like the sibling to eternity. Yeah, I think there is a force for good, and I think in the meantime we can just call it the hands that guide the hands. And I like this idea that we have this abstract force for good that's guiding these characters to where they need to be, and selecting these champions to be part of a lineup to fight evil or to be part of the winning universe in Avengers Secret Wars. That's my hope for him. I know I've been streaming for a long time, everyone. I could talk about this movie forever, and I'm going to just talk about this as long as I can. But I thought this was just a beautiful scene. And she goes, "Oh, my beloved raccoon, this story was yours all along. You just didn't know it." And I think he's like, "I'm not a raccoon," but then he gets yanked back into reality. I think it's important that he didn't die in this moment because he still has something to learn on Earth. There's a moment here that I don't have footage for. But while they're over here, we do cut back to nowhere, and there's just a couple fun cameos. They're doing the dogs playing poker scene. Kraglin's there. Howard the Duck comes back. And there's a cameo by Lloyd Kaufman. That's James Gunn's mentor figure from his days when he was at Troma as a filmmaker, as a young filmmaker. And then also, the Xandar antiques dealer, played by Christopher Fairbanks, shows up. He's the guy originally from the 1989 Batman. He's like, "What are you?" Batman's like, "I'm Batman." And he also was in Andor. And then, yeah, he played that antiques dealer in Volume 1. So I love seeing him come back. Okay, so we're breaking into the third act of the movie, and I'm just going to kind of move through this quickly here, but like, really, we see how unhinged Herbert Wyndham gets. He says, "Kill everyone in the head of that dead god," and he tells his recorder, "There is no god, that's why I stepped in." And, Gods and Monsters is the name of James Gunn's plan for the DCU, but I think it also applies to everything he's made. Definitely the Guardians of the Galaxy movies has been a battle of gods and monsters. And the monsters are the ones we should celebrate. The gods are the ones who are doomed to fail. And I think any character who claims to be a god or aspires to be a god is just going to be punished for that aspiration. So Wyndham, like a crazy man, activates his Hellspawn, I believe is what they were called. They look awesome. They're really gross and creepy. And they're these like big like warriors that were supposed to protect and be the army protecting the new colony on the new world. And these are the people, they're also drones that fly through here. They invade nowhere. They're really nasty, nasty jerks. But we should forgive them. But the Guardians don't have time for that in this one. It's not their fault. There is this pretty great battle where they play No Sleep Till Brooklyn, which you might know reference from Spider-Man No Way Home, where, what's his face? Flash came in and said, "No sleep till Boston." And they're like, "It's Brooklyn, dumbass." Yeah, Beastie Boys totally having a moment in the MCU right now with Intergalactic in the Marvels trailer. Blurp is now with them now. Remember, Blurp is a Fasaki. This is a fur-covered being that was the same species that was fighting Orlones in that bar in Volume 1, and it's voiced by D. Bradley Baker, who does all the Clone Wars voices. So great. He just does the like vocal utterances of this guy, and you know what? He crushes it. Okay, so this is a shot that the chatter earlier was referring to. This was in a trailer, believe it or not. So yeah, the jets on the back of Nowhere, seeing Nowhere as a mobilized skull with cannons in its eyes. Yeah, this was absolutely in a promo, and I didn't want to talk about it too much. When I saw it, I'm like, this looks like it's from the final battle of the movie, so I don't want to talk about it too much. But yeah. It looks incredible, I gotta say. I love the idea. It's almost like when in Independence Day, where Goldblum and Will Smith like give the virus to the alien mothership, and it's a skull that goes ho 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 ho. It's a total pirate show skull on the flag move, where it's a battleship, right? They have cannons that are firing at them. This feels like Jeffrey Rush could be piloting this thing and showed up in this final battle. And I love a good space pirate thing. Kraglin is like having his dream moment here. He used the skull of the old dead gods to kill the new gods who think that they're better than the old gods were. I just thought this is such a great final battle set piece. I love that James Gunn set this up. So meanwhile, the team reunites. Kraglin has to summon his ability to use the Yaka arrow. We get a cameo from Michael Rooker coming back as Yondu. He reminds him that it's the use of the heart. Again, love, I think, is the ultimate force. I think love is the hand that guides the hands. It's kind of like the invisible hand that guides all of us. If we can access our inner love power, we're paying a debt to the love dimension, and love guides us, and love guides others. We pay it forward that way. I'm talking out my ass right now. I'm just saying, I think that should be the answer. I don't know if they should ever answer it and have like Sigourney Weaver play her or something like that. But yeah, we get this payoff with Cosmo. He finally calls him a good dog, calls her a good dog, and it's earned. Yeah, so Wyndham survives a mutiny, and he just goes wild. And then we get what to many will be everyone's favorite part of the movie. This No Sleep Till Brooklyn, this awesome 2 minutes, everybody. They lasted this scene for 2 minutes where they're fighting through the hallway. Sorry, I'm trying to get to it. Okay, so we cobbled it together from trailer footage here. It lasts for 2 minutes, and it's unbroken. And look, I think unbroken long takes are a little overrated nowadays because every director's trying to show off how they can do it. It's only cool to me when it is either subtle, and it's like that shot in the Book of Boba Fett that Bryce Dallas Howard directed, that episode where we just track Mando as he's walking through the ring world, or it showcases character in a way that you couldn't do as well by editing it and chopping it up. And in this case, what makes this scene great isn't the fact that we never edited away from it. It's the fact that in all of these beats, we see the Guardians connecting in a way that they have not before. The teamwork of this montage is just incredible. There's 6, 7 different Guardians now working together. The way they collaborate and work together is nothing short of brilliant. We get these little callback moments where Rocket jumps on Groot's shoulder, and it reminds us of the Kiln shootout in the 2014 film. From this, Rocket jumps down and runs down Groot's extended arms down the hallway. We follow him. The camera glides through a hole that Rocket just shot. From that same extended Groot arm, Mantis grabs it and like a gymnast swings across it, lands on a guy's shoulders, flips him back into the arm to clothesline him. Like, they're all using each other's parts to inspire each other to make the next move. And by staying on them for one unbroken shot, we see physically in real time how these Guardians are connecting. And it is a form of superpower. It is a payoff to 7 different titles before this, leading up to these characters being separated on different A plots and B plots on different planets. Finally, they're all in a closed space together, using each other's powers and skills and moves to set up their next move. In real world fights, it would be far more chaotic than this, I understand. But that's not the point of the scene. The point of the scene is to watch people become more than the sum of their parts. And that's, I think, why this is such an incredible thing. It's not the music, honestly. No Sleep Till Brooklyn is a jammer, but it could have been really any song here, and I would have loved it. The value of the music is the fact that we don't edit away from the music or switch songs. We generally sense that the runtime of any song is like 2 to 3 to 4 minutes, and the fact that we just hear one song playing through and it's already been playing for a minute just reminds us that we have not edited it away. So I thought it was great. I cheered at the end of this all 3 times when I saw this. I thought it was just incredible. Okay, so coming down to the final minutes of the movie here, Rocket decides to split away from the others and go back to the cage. And he sees that it is still full of raccoon kits. And he opens the cage using that key card. That's why he held on to it, because he knew that there were others back in that cage that he would have to free someday. And this is something that he's been living with his entire life. And he opens the cage and he finds out quite a bit about his origin. That label says Lumbus Wildlife Center, TER 3211 900021, and these are not Terra's coordinates. This is not C53 or whatever. That's from the Marvels gave Earth its own kind of intergalactic coordinates. This is something different. Says that these raccoons' origin is North America, Kingdom Animalia, phylum Chordata, that refers to animals with backbones, and then Procyon Latour. Procyon Latour is a genus and species name of a raccoon. We actually heard this said by David Hasselhoff in the Guardians Inferno song from Volume 2. He's like, getting down and dirty with the Procyon Latour. So, yeah, we know that Rocket has always been a raccoon, and David Hasselhoff knew it the whole time. He frees them, and it's like there's a desperation. He's like trying to save as many of them as he can. He feels like Oscar Schindler, like I could have done more, I should have done more. And then Wyndham comes in and says, 89P13, you're an abomination. It totally feels like Javert finally getting his hands on Jean Valjean, but like Javert, he's not gonna end in a good place. The Guardians work together to bring down Herbert Wyndham, and I don't have the footage here because it wasn't shown in trailers, but basically this whole movie, they've been calling this Face Off, and we get the Face Off. The face is peeled off, and it feels like a Red Skull moment, does it not? But it was interesting how Rocket chooses to spare him. He says, I'm a freaking guardian of the galaxy. So Herbert Wyndham, the High Evolutionary, may still be alive in the MCU. And I think that's awesome. I hate it when they kill off characters, especially really, really great characters too early. I'll have to rewatch it to see if we see like an escape pod escape this crashing ship. I assume it is somewhere in the background, because otherwise, wouldn't you want to kill him off? It's just kind of left open for interpretation. Red Skull is still out there in the MCU, and I feel like Herbert Wyndham and Red Skull would have a very, very interesting and very unsettling conversation, because they're pretty much coming from the same ideology. And he says, I wanted to perfect the world. Rocket chooses to spare him. Why? Because I think he's remembering what Lila's ghost told him of, it's not the hands that make us, it's the hands that guide the hands. And I think Rocket wants to be the hands that guide the hands. He views himself as a philosopher king with an opportunity here to do better and to forgive, but not necessarily forgive, but, you know, Herbert Wyndham had that interesting line earlier where he said, for briefly I applied my own mental acuity to myself, and now gravity serves my whims, right? If this guy were to just reapply his brilliance to anything else, he could help so many people. But instead, he's all about like perfecting society. And Rocket rightly points out, he didn't want to perfect society, he just hated the way it was. So I think Rocket is now giving him a second chance, the way they gave Adam Warlock a second chance in this movie. Like, you can do better. You can do better, and I'm going to choose to be the hands that guide the hands. There's this moment where... So Mantis frees Lambshank. This is this guy's name. I'm pretty sure he's voiced by James Gunn. He's like, thank you! This little monster, but he looks cool. I like that they didn't judge him. I forgot to point out that, yeah, they do spend some time with the kids. The kids in cages, right? I think you see them in the background here. Yeah, there they are. I wasn't crazy. Like, anytime we just see, like, group of kids in the final battle, it just reminds me of Thor Love and Thunder. I just wasn't crazy about how many times they put a ton of kids in this. It's just my personal gripe. Whatever. I'm not going to be like, screw this movie. It's just like, okay. Hey, I get it. I'm a grown man watching a franchise that's made for families and for kids. And I'll probably feel different when I have a kid of my own. But yeah, the idea is that they want to save both the higher life forms and the lower life forms, and higher and lower is just like a sense of perspective, and we should stop using those terms of status. They get them off the ship, but the ship is crashing because Cosmo, this poor telekinetic dog, is just trying to keep this link together. Peter has to run back for the Zune, just like in the Kiln in Volume 1. He runs back for the Walkman because he can't leave it behind. And he does the spacewalk, and those of you who are saying that Peter Quill needed his mask in this movie, I completely agree. Where was Peter Quill's mask in this movie? I don't think it was destroyed. I'm pretty sure we saw it in Endgame. I'd have to rewatch Love and Thunder, but like, he totally could have used his mask in this moment. Maybe he left it on the Bowie. Maybe he left it in nowhere. I'm not really sure. Maybe he dropped it. But like, yeah, he absolutely could have used it in this moment. But otherwise, we wouldn't have had Adam Warlock swoop in to save him, recreating Michelangelo's David. I just love that James Gunn committed to his Peter's face bloating out into a potato. I don't think that would happen. But, you know, Peter and Gamora and many of them, thanks to Herbert Wyndham, do have these cybernetic implants that enable them to exist in space for just a few moments longer than people normally should. I don't understand why he would bloat out, though. I think he would bloat, or he would cave in almost immediately. I don't know. He's half celestial. His body's weird. So yeah, now Nowhere has become like this new refugee colony for all types of species. I like how Wyndham considered himself the captain of Noah's Ark, but he was abusing the animals. So now Nowhere gets to be the home and the new colony for these species, and I think that's great. Nebula decides to leave, and Peter's like, you know, yeah, we were a lot of fun, more fun than you ever would have believed, but, you know, I like that they didn't come back together. I like that Nebula gets to stay on her own journey, because it just wouldn't have been right for them to come together. It would have felt forced. Peter tells the others that he has to leave. And this is what I mean. Like, I don't think we needed to kill these characters off. I like that they just move on to another part of their life. That characters don't have to die to transition. I think those of us feel like once one stage of our life is over, what is next? And I think movies sometimes too much will just kill off a character at that stage of their life, because it's just easier to view characters through one arc. And once that arc is done, their story's done, and they don't have a life after that. But that's not how it works. You know, characters still do have to live and remember their lives, even though the most interesting part of their life is over. sometimes there may be a more interesting life ahead of them. And I don't think we need to tell people that once one phase of their life is over, their entire life is over. So I like that James Gunn did this. Again, I'm not saying this movie's perfect. I think there's quite a few flaws in this movie. I think Adam Warlock and Aisha were underwritten. I think some of the jokes might just go on a little bit too long. I think some of the song choices just feel a little random. But I think overall, it's a masterpiece of a film in terms of an emotional journey to close out this franchise. And I really, really love it. And I think it's like really the perfect ending to all these characters. The fact that we get closure for all of them, I just think is beautiful. And this, again, this is how you do it. Rocket gets named to be the new Ravager captain. Gamora says that, or not Gamora, Mantis says that she wants to leave. Sorry, there's like a specific shot here that I want to point out. Okay, so they're all standing in a circle, and Rocket is the only one who's sitting. And this reminds me a lot of that moment on the Ravagers ship as we broke into the third act of the first film. It was such a beautiful callback to that moment where Rocket said, "We're just a bunch of jackasses standing in a circle." And he's not standing, he's the last one to stand, he's just sitting on this stool. I just thought it was full circle for them, full circle to the circle. Of course, it's not the same characters. Mantis wasn't with them, Nebula wasn't with them. But a lot of people are talking about how Groot says in this moment, we hear, "I am Groot." Or no, excuse me, we hear, "I love you guys." This is the first time that we've heard him say anything other than "I am Groot" or "We are Groot." Why? It's because the audience, I believe, are now part of the Guardians family. We have spent enough time with Groot to we can translate. Our ears have adjusted to hearing his bark rubbing against itself in his throat into the vocal utterances that he has intended. And the way that the other Guardians can hear "I am Groot" and hear a whole paragraph of a backstory, the way Mantis can, just how much of a good empath she is, and the rest of them have this kind of history with them. Gamora does not and cannot understand "I am Groot." We have spent so much time with Groot, we can now hear it when Groot says, "I love you guys." You know, if anyone was standing outside this room, one of the other residents of Nowhere, they would have heard "I am Groot." But since we are now on the inside, we hear "I love you guys." I just thought that was beautiful. So in the final part of this movie, Yondu pulls back out the Zune, and Peter leaves him a note that says, "I went back and got it for you." And to me, that is a Britney Spears "Oops, I Did It Again" reference. "Oh, I thought the old lady dropped it in the ocean." "Yeah, well, babe, I went down and got it for you." Oops, I did it again. No, I just only said it because James Gunn is obsessed with Britney Spears. He named his dog Dr. Wesley Vaughn Spears. Phyla says one of her favorite artists is Britney Spears. Britney's freed, and I'm allowed to reference her in a live stream. No apologies. But yeah, he plays "The Dog Days Are Over" by Florence and the Machine. A music that he gets from the 2000s playlist. And yeah, it's a wonderful song. I think people are now going to hear this song and remember how this movie came to an end. To me, it spoke to me at a different part of my life when I first moved to Los Angeles. It was like around 2010, 2011, I think, when this song came out, and this was the song on the radio that summer. It's like the song of that summer. And it was like the first time I viewed Los Angeles as home to me, because I had moved from Florida to California, and it was very stressful to me. Like, it was the first time I lived in a big city. It was scary. I was couch hopping. I didn't have like a full-time job yet. I would get caught in traffic. I'd get cut off. Like, I got my car towed at one point because I didn't get my license soon enough in California to change over my registration. So for months and months and months, it did not feel like home to me. And finally that summer, I don't know what it was. I think I finally found a group of friends through an improv class I was taking or something like that. And I was on my way to meet them to go see a movie. Let's see, 2010, it might have been, no, 2011. So this might have been the Captain America movie, I think. The first Cap film that I went to go see with them. That might have been later in the year. I can't remember. But that song was playing on the radio, and I was like, oh, the dog days are over. Like, it was like the dog days of summer. It's finally started to cool off. And I feel like this is my home now. I finally found my new family. So to me, I totally connected with this music. It's not just a triumphant thing. It's like the difficult parts of your life are over now and you can just relax. Peter goes back to Missouri and he runs back into Jason Quill. We find out why his middle name is Jason. His grandfather's still alive, which is interesting. I know a lot of people have like theories about Jason Quill, like Peter through his DNA from his mother, Meredith Quill. Is why Peter was the only one of Ego's progeny who was able to carry the celestial gene. So something was unique about Meredith Quill that left Peter that way, and that came from Jason. So that lazy neighbor that they were talking about might have been some other kid that Jason had. They said the legendary Star-Lord will return, which might reference, Peter's sister in the comics, Victoria, commander of the Spartax people, their army, and that's what Jason, he was emperor of the Spartax Empire. So like I think that could be implied there, but it also just might be retirement community gossip. What's also just so great about this closure is like it's a dance, right? It's a group dance number, and like everyone's just celebrating. They all kind of howl like animals in this moment, and they're all one. And there's no like hierarchy of species in this moment. In that, Rocket can finally let loose. Drax finally dances. He started as a non-dancer in this movie. I love that they put that quote in the opener, and he dances, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful finale. And we get that post-credit scene that I broke down in another video. But yeah, Groot has evolved into like King Groot. He's got like a crown now. I think our man gets swole because he's in the radius, the nearby vicinity of celestial light, and I think that allows him to grow. Phi Lavelle has joined the team, it seems like as a Quasar, and we get a call back to Redbone's Come and Get Your Love, which is the music that Peter played when he's going to get the orb in Morag. Okay, so I'm going to close that now by finally taking some super chats. You've all been so patient, and I'm so sorry I haven't taken your super chats up until now, if there have been any. If not, I'm just going to take some other. The Brody Show, thank you for your super chat. I didn't see a message there, but I appreciate you. Beware the Dread says, if you think about it, technically everyone did die. The old person used to be gone, and now they can become who they are meant to be and move on. High Evolutionary wasn't able to do that with his obsession and was doomed to fail. Yeah, that's like the way Game of Thrones talks about the concept of kill the boy, right? Kill the past version of yourself that you were. And I think that kind of is what maturation is. You are mourning the past era of yourself that you used to be. Whenever you go through a major life change, whether it's a new job or you move to a new place, or you go from middle school to high school or high school to college, or you graduate from college, whatever kind of commencement phase, you always feel some depression a little bit because you are mourning the death of a version of yourself, of an era of yourself. So yeah, I think that there are other types of symbolic deaths. And I think that's what this movie really delivered on. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to look through any other super chats. Y'all, I really appreciate you joining me for this. The Brody Show, you said, would have loved the F-bomb to be saved for Rocket saying the effing Guardians of the Galaxy. Love the movie, though, and love TDD. Yeah, I think he did. Groot kind of said that, and it was censored in the second one, right? He said only he didn't use frickin'. So, yeah, I think that would have been a more fun callback, but I also think that might be an MPAA thing. If you call too much attention to it in a hero moment, they might be like, it kind of changes the tone of the movie a little bit. I would have been totally okay with it. I just, you never know. The MPAA is just crazy. Gavin J says, hey Eric, are you still planning to do a deep dive of Succession? I'd love to see that. Been watching for 4 years. I appreciate all your breakdowns. I would have loved to have covered Succession on the main channel. It's just like we did an Everything You Need to Know primer video of it, and just the audience wasn't really there for it. We would have lost some money on it if we'd covered every episode of that. But man, I've loved this final season, and it's one of many shows that I would love to explore on this deep dive channel, but maybe by just doing like an episode on season 1, an episode on season 2. So that, Severance, Watchmen, HBO's Watchmen, and Zack Snyder's Watchmen I want to explore, and then Lost. I really, really want to do, like, maybe sometime next year, I'll be in a place where I can do, like, a 6-episode series on the 6 seasons of Lost. So, yeah, and I have a whole summer planned of, like, great content you're going to love. On the deep dive, next week we're going to have a deep dive on The Matrix, which is the most comprehensive video analysis I've ever done on The Matrix before. I found like 20 or 30 new things that after seeing The Matrix like 20 times, I had never seen these before, but yeah, you're going to love that. I'm going to do a special investigation next week about the dangers of AI and why the WGA is on strike right now for a rightful fear of where AI is taking everything, and also they're being like completely exploited by the streamers and the studios by doing these short seasons, and they're basically trying to transform them into gig workers. I stand with the WGA. Like, get what you guys deserve. I'm not a member of the WGA, but I have several friends who are. And yeah, we couldn't do any of this. This channel would not exist with the hardworking, brilliant, creative screenwriters. Say what you will about, maybe you didn't love the writing on certain series. All the great writing, everything you did love about the show started with a screenwriter coming up with it. What is love if not? What is grief if not love persevering? Was written by a writer. These single lines that they can come up with change our lives in such profound ways, and they deserve to be rightfully compensated for that. But yeah, the investigation is going to dig into, like, I basically figured out how I can clone myself digitally, and I'm really terrified by what I was able to come up with. So stay tuned for that. Just looking around to see if I missed anything else. Again, guys, this has been almost 2 hours of us live streaming after we had like a technical snafu at the beginning, and it's been such a blast to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy with you. To me, this is everything that I would have wanted from this. I think the theories of the fact that the Celestials' brain fluid might have been the tools that Herbert Wyndham was using, I think it's still possible. It wasn't specified in this movie, but I'm not disappointed by that. Knuckles 415 says, love the breakdowns. I live in SF, so I hope we meet. Yeah, I think I might be doing an improv show tonight at Endgames Comedy down in the South Mission at 9 p.m. If you want to come check that out. But yeah, I'm around. Just kind of walk around San Francisco. You'll see me walking around, very tired from walking up a hill. I love all you guys so much. I hope you enjoyed this analysis of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I really appreciated this movie. If this was too long for you, there's going to be another another way to support new Rockstars is to grab some merch on nerdriot.shop. Include this 89P13 shirt. On the main channel, in a couple hours, you'll see our full Easter egg analysis of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I didn't cover some of the things that I cover in this one here, but so yeah, you'll really, really love that. The break room, the New Rockstars live stream break room is coming back today, later this afternoon. So stick around for that. They got a big announcement that I'm really excited for. So be sure to tune in for that. And then, yeah, please subscribe to New Rockstars. You can support me just by following me on Twitter, Instagram, at EA Voss. And thank you all so much. Another thanks to One Shot Energy for sponsoring this live stream. I don't know if you noticed, I got really, really focused, I feel like, after I had one of those. So this was definitely grab one of those. And we'll see you next time, everyone. Bye, and appreciate all your support. Oh, thanks again, Sage, for After the Life Scene reminding me of Deadpool 2. Oh, yeah, similar to that, too. Great idea, Sage. I'll see you guys. Bye.